The Resident Evil series has grown and changed a lot since the first release of the series back in 1996. I would argue that it was such a phenomenon that it revolutionized survival horror games in almost every aspect. The way that Resident Evil captured the noises, the set camera angles, and restricted movement when aiming, it was crafted perfectly to incite fear in players. The atmosphere, the lore, and the puzzles made this game stand out. Due to all of these successful elements, Capcom would go on to make sequels. RE2 came out and it was a great follow-up to the original. RE3 soon followed, although depending on who you asked, the reception of this game could be somewhat mixed. Although it still branched out on the foundation of the previous games, giving the players choices, randomized enemy encounters for replayability, and the Mercenaries mode. As the series progressed to Code Veronica, Resident Evil 1 Remake, Resident Evil 0, Outbreak, which is a series I'd love for them to bring back, and the very much loved Resident Evil 4. Now, I love Resident Evil 4, like many others do, but I think this is where the series shifted, but not in a bad way. During the shift, I would argue again that it revolutionized the gaming industry as well, but this time not just the horror genre either. Resident Evil 4 introduced more action, leaving much of the horror aspect of the series behind. Not entirely, but it was a great step for the franchise. It brought back the beloved character Leon Kennedy and did away with the fixed camera angles, featuring an over-the-shoulder style experience. This gave a more immersive exploration experience. Although I could talk about RE4 forever, this isn't what this video is about. After RE4, the series took a turn for the worst. RE5 and RE6 would be considered the downfall of the series for me, completely abandoning the horror aspect entirely and going all in on the action shooter experience for players. The series never really felt the same even though the characters were familiar. It just felt like the developers or Capcom were out of touch with what the series was, until the release of RE7. Unlike RE4, I wouldn't say that RE7 changed gaming or the culture of horror games like previous installments, but it changed the series in a way that brought back what fans loved about the series, survival horror. And what better way to go back to the series' roots by making the players experience a creepy house, but with twists. This time the game would focus on a first-person style experience with an original character that the community quickly fell in love with. Ethan Winters quickly became one of my favorite characters when RE7 was released. Something about his lack of experience and the fact that he was just a normal guy looking for his wife just portrayed likable aspects that he had. Desperately looking for his wife, Ethan ventured to Louisiana after he received a video from his said wife, Mia. Once you get there, things start to feel off, and it takes a turn for the worst almost immediately. You find Mia, but things aren't what they seem. As you venture together, she eventually attacks Ethan, and the part where she's crawling up the steps was something I'll always remember about RE7. You get the sense that you know something is down there waiting for you. The dark stairway that leads to the basement, the tension, you know what's going to happen, but you know you have to go down. I remember having so many questions, and I was quickly hooked after Mia cut off Ethan's hand, because I'm thinking, is the character you're playing as really about to die? Not even an hour into the game? But once you're finished fighting off Mia, after she eats about 19 pistol rounds to the face, Ethan is introduced to Jack Baker, the owner of the house that he's exploring. Fun fact, you actually see him in the beginning when you're trying to gain entry to the house. It's pretty obvious, but if you're as blind as me when I first played, I didn't even see him. I mean, Jack could have killed me instantly and I never would have known. But for the people that have played RE8, this scene ends up becoming more significant than what is shown. Like I said though, at this point in RE7, I'm hooked. Ethan later wakes up around a dinner table, his hand has been reattached, and he's tied to a chair. This is something that we haven't really seen in the series that I love so much about this game. Interactions with the villains and the main characters. There are some throughout the series, but none on the level that RE7 captures. The craziness of this family and how they talk to one another. The way they react to Ethan not accepting their gift just builds up more tension and more questions. RE7 does an exceptional job at motivating you to keep pushing on to find answers to these questions. I'll touch more on Jack Baker later, but I want to mention that every scene that he's in, I think it was executed perfectly. There's a level of horror and humor with this character that is the perfect blend of scary but funny.
That's my groove.
And the humor never overshadows the horror part. If anything, one could view that as being even more scary. But the times when Jack is chasing you around the house is one of the most stressful parts of the game. Never feeling safe, always knowing he's somewhere in the house, but not knowing where when he's not chasing you. Marguerite Baker was just straight up terrifying. I thought she was much more aggressive than Jack was, plus the uncanny valley feeling you get when her limbs stretch out and she's crawling on the floor, walls, and ceiling still doesn't sit right with me. I also think the reference to her name being the same as a Marguerite Daisy is a nice touch. It's just a parallel to the person she was before the game and the irony of how she was after Evelyn. Lucas was just a straight up psychopath even before the events of RE7 took place. But my point being is that each character truly feels unique. The interactions between all of them have different scenarios that go along with them. With Jack, you're just trying to get away as he views you as a little plaything while he laughs and taunts you. Marguerite is just terrifying, like I said, and you feel like she's more dead set on killing you as quick as possible. Lucas made you realize just how crazy he was, setting up a game to kill people as they tried to escape. Each area did a great job at capturing the uniqueness of each member of the family too. I still think that Ethan is written and developed better in every way. Like I said, he quickly became one of my favorites because of the way that these events changed him, although you do see a lot more of the change develop in RE8, but it's a good setup for the sequel. He was just a random guy looking for his wife, and he's thrown into this situation to defend himself. Entries of the series, you were already playing as experienced characters that knew how to defend themselves and had proper training. I guess it could be argued that Leon and Claire were inexperienced during the events of RE2, but Leon still had to have some kind of training to be a cop, and Claire always seemed like she had proper training by the way that she handled guns. Plus her brother being Chris makes me think that he taught her some things as well. The development that Ethan goes through is great. He starts off by questioning everything, and he's startled by almost everything, like any normal person would go through. As you progress, it's like he begins to feel more confident, similar to the player. The more Ethan progresses, the better guns or weapons he acquires, the more confident the player feels, so in a way, you just feel a stronger connection with Ethan. He's likable. He does have some humor thrown into the mix as well, especially when interacting with Jack, but he displays confidence the further you go after. The relentless motivation to keep going for his wife, conquering the terrible odds, creating the serum, and dealing with Evelyn. There are traits for a likable main character in my eyes. Speaking of Evelyn though, she checked the box for being straight up creepy. There's just something always terrifying about a laughing child and anything horror related. It's uncomfortable, especially with the drawings, and the comment she makes about being a family just adds to that. I love the twist about Evelyn also being the older lady that randomly shows up throughout the game. When I first played, I had a feeling that she would be important or that she would jump out as you passed her through a hallway. I never expected her to end up being Evelyn though. Her relationship with Mia wasn't something I was crazy about, but I guess it makes sense for the story that they were trying to tell where Evelyn wanted a family. Towards the end when you give the serum to Mia, the game takes another shift. I also refuse to believe that anyone chose Zoe. I still don't understand the justification behind that choice, Capcom. Completely disregard Ethan's sole purpose for getting into the entire predicament in the first place, just to choose another woman right in front of her. I never confidently made a faster decision in my life when giving Mia the serum. After this scene though, you begin to play as Mia with all of your items now gone. Basically, you're back to square one. You're powerless. You can't even defend yourself, and the mold monsters are on the ship with you. You scavenge, you kill them, and eventually become powerful enough to gain your confidence back. Exploring the ship in the flashback and in the present was a nice touch. Reading the lore and the perspective of some of the crewmates was cool too. You save Ethan, and then again, you're right back to square one. You're playing as Ethan, looking for Mia, but this time, you have your weapons back. So you push through, destroying all the mold in your way, in a really cool conclusion. Looking for Evelyn to destroy the bioweapon that she had been hidden away as. But the part that really got to me though, was the part where you talk to Jack in some kind of purgatory or hive mind type of situation.
Ethan? Hey, shh, I know. I'm not gonna hurt you. Hell, I never would have if I could have helped it.
This is the real Jack, and he speaks to you, and you can tell his demeanor is completely different. He's begging Ethan to save his family and deal with Evelyn, but he never tells Ethan to kill her, because all she ever wanted was a family. It's so bittersweet because even after everything Evelyn did to the Baker family, he's conflicted about his morals and still has his empathy. You can even tell just how emotional he is by his movements and his plea to Ethan. It's a beautiful moment that Ethan and Jack have together, and that's why Jack is my favorite character in the Baker family. It just adds more weight and emotional attachment to these characters, even when you realize there's nothing that can be done to help them. I also love the ending where Chris tells you to use the pistol and you're hanging upside down. Very flashy, but not too over the top. Like I said, RE7 was a great refresh for the series. I think Capcom took a step back and looked at what made the series so incredible, revisiting survival horror in a different approach, but with a pretty average story. But I don't mean that in a bad way. That's what I thought of the story when I played it. Average. but the characters, the horror, and every other aspect that was built for this game made it shine in a unique way. Building onto the Resident Evil universe with new characters, connecting to Chris Redfield, and going back to their roots was the best possible decision that could have been made for this series. A couple years later, we received back-to-back remakes of RE2 and RE3 in 2019 and 2020. RE2 was loved by fans, while RE3 wasn't necessarily loved as much. There was a lot of cut content, and the game was shorter than RE2, but I like to think that the wave of positivity that came from RE7 helped bring the series back to where it needed to be. Hopefully in the future, we never see another RE6. But that will do it for this video on RE7. I'm curious, what is everyone's thoughts on RE7 and the series as a whole? I'd love to hear what everyone has to say, so please comment down below and give this video a like. Also, consider subscribing if you enjoyed the video. There are crazy rumors about the Resident Evil series and some of the future titles being in development at the moment, that being a couple of remakes and RE9, which I might end up doing a couple videos about. But until then, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.